All right, check this out. So this is my workstation in the van. It's where I do all of my editing on my laptop. And you see that dent right there? That big ugly dent right on the speaker grill? Well, my laptop is right under the cabinet where I keep all my camera gear. And if I don't put a hand out to catch something which inevitably falls out of this black hole every time I open it, it tends to fall right here. It is latched, so that thousands of dollars worth of camera equipment don't. And that's why I have a blown out speaker. I can't live like this anymore, man. Something's gotta change. When you live in a van, staying organized is both easy and hard. It's easy because you're kind of forced to be a minimalist. You only have room for a small number of things and everything has its place. Except that's not really true. Sure, keeping plates and cups organized in drawers is easy, but the other half of our stuff ends up getting thrown into the worst enemy of an organized life: big, undivided cabinets. Cabinets are actually pretty good for things that are conducive to stuffing away, like clothes, but they are decidedly not good for camera equipment, electronics, tools, and 3D printing accessories. And ironically, these are all the things that I continue to acquire as we travel, even though I don't have places to put them. It's actually gotten so bad that I've started storing things on this bench where I'm sitting, so I have to move things out of the way every time I sit down here to work. It is embarrassing to show you how many of the cabinets in our van look like this, probably because I have this dream of being one of these hyper-organized makers that I look up to. But if I'm being honest, I've always been a messy desk guy. I don't want to be a messy desk guy, and I think the only way to stop being a messy desk guy is, and it's so crazy how many things in life end up coming down to this: just do it! Now you can download open source, modular, fully 3D printable storage solutions online, like Zach Friedman's Gridfinity. But most of these storage solutions are designed to be accessed from the top, which doesn't really work for my situation since the cabinet is up at eye level. So I decided to design my own storage solution completely from scratch. It's more fun that way anyway. My dream storage solution is a series of drawers that can store pretty much everything from small SD cards up to cameras themselves. I also want it to be fully modular so that if I acquire different camera equipment in the future, I don't have to 3D print everything again. One of the best parts about making things yourself is you can design things that you can't buy. Sure, this might sound like a basic screw organizer, and of course I'm making it to perfectly fit in the cabinet, but this cabinet is also about 16 inches deep, and I don't think I have ever seen a screw organizer with drawers that long, and you can bet I'm making them to take up that entire length. Of course, I'm gonna have to split this into pieces so it'll fit on the build plate of the X1 Carbon, and I'm trying a new joining method for the multi-piece prints. I'm doing sort of a woodworking joint, a half lap that I can glue together, and I hope this joint will be nice and strong because there's a fair amount of overlap and lots of surface area for glue. I also modeled in some tracks for slide-in organizers, and I spent a lot of time sizing the drawers, so I think they'll hold the full range of camera equipment and electronics. Now to start, I left a fair amount of open space on top because things like my main camera and my drone, they're just too bulky to put into drawers. I might add some sort of other organizational method later, but I don't want to 3D print absolutely everything and then find out I made some really silly design error. So I'm going to start just by printing the drawer organizer itself. Everything's getting printed on the Bambu Lab X1 Carbon that I have here in our camper van. Now, Bambu Lab is the sponsor for this video, but I've had this printer for the last 18 months, well before they were sponsoring this channel, and there's a reason why I brought it with us in the van. It is genuinely a phenomenal machine. It's Core XY, very fast print speeds. There's the AMS, so you can switch out up to 4 filaments and do multicolor printing, Wi-Fi connectivity, built-in camera, remote monitoring. But I think the best testament to the build quality of this machine is the fact that it's lived in our van for 7 months and still works great. I mean, we drive on rough roads pretty much every day, and the X1 Carbon doesn't bat an eye. I regularly use this printer while driving, which I know is very attractive to a select population of makers.
There are dozens of us. Dozens!
By comparison, I've used printers that you have to manually re-level every 5 to 10 prints, and those printers live in stationary buildings. The X1 Carbon automatically levels itself before every print. It has AI first layer inspection, spaghetti detection. This printer just works, and that's the reason I love it. I didn't realize this until I was already printing, but when I split the enclosure into 4 pieces, I ended up with a really tall, skinny piece on one of the quadrants, and it printed horribly because the nozzle was just pushing it around right near the top. But this was super easy to fix by just snapping it off, printing a reinforcement piece in the correct orientation, and then just gluing it into place. This thing is hefty. It took slightly more than 1 kilogram of filament. You can see right there, slightly different shade of gray where I had to change out the spool. The half lap joints worked really well. Everything aligned up perfectly, and this feels sturdy. Like way sturdier than one of those store-bought screw organizers. Definitely err on the side of thicker. And now we just gotta print every single drawer. One of my worst traits as a maker is sometimes I just design things that have zero margin for error. I included a 0.01 inch gap around each side of each drawer, which does allow for a nice slide fit, assuming that you glue the halves together perfectly, which I did not do on this particular drawer. The halves were slightly misaligned, which caused it to get stuck about halfway. Now, this would be an easy job for a table saw, but as you might guess, wasn't able to fit one of those into our van conversion. But since we're currently traveling through the Pacific Northwest, I thought I'd reach out to Cam from Blacktail Studio, who was kind enough to let me use his gigantic table saw to cut a tiny sliver off of this drawer, and it worked perfectly. Shout out to Cam, amazing woodworker. As you might have noticed, I included this little jog in the corner of the enclosure. That's to fit around the switch and wiring for the under cabinet light. And my original plan for holding the organizer in the cabinet was, well, I didn't really have a plan. I kind of just figured it out on the fly, like I do most things. But I was thinking of using screws. However, after the conundrum with the stuck drawer, I was worried that the head of a screw was gonna catch in a drawer and it wouldn't work, so I figured out a much more elegant solution. I just 3D printed some super simple strips and glued them in front of the frame, which essentially locks it into the cabinet. K-I-S-S. Works every time. I cannot express to you how good it feels to finally have this cabinet organized. It might not look like much, but these super long drawers are exactly what I needed. And now that my computer is safe from random objects falling on it, I think I'm ready to tackle this cabinet. So just to make sure we're all oriented, this is the cabinet above the X1 Carbon, and this cabinet is a completely different beast from the last one. It is both wider and deeper, and I store much bigger things in this one. Things like 3D printing filament and my microphone and build plates for the X1 Carbon. Because of that, I can't just rinse and repeat what I did for the last cabinet. I mean, if I were to make 3D printed drawers for this, they would be as long as my arm, and I don't really want to have to pull those out into the aisle of the van. I think I have a good strategy for this cabinet, and to start, I need to build this platform drawer thing. You might have noticed that I built in this big flat compartment, and that's to hold a big flat 3D printed drawer for big flat objects like build plates from my Bambu printers, my Shaper Trace, drawing tablet notebooks, and to print that drawer, a new 3D printer has entered the chat. This is the Bambu Lab A1 with the AMS light, and in case you were wondering, yes, it is easy enough to assemble that you can do it on the back of a camper van on the side of a mountain. Only took about 15 minutes before I had this baby up and running. The A1 is a full-sized bed slinger. It actually has the exact same build volume as the X1 Carbon and prints almost as fast, but it is significantly cheaper, especially now during Bambu's 2-year anniversary sale. But don't let that lower price fool you. This thing is packed with features. The AMS light gives you 4-color printing capability. It has fully automatic bed leveling and calibration, which means no messing with leveling screws. You got active motor noise cancellation, flow rate compensation, which all amounts to fantastic quality pieces printed quickly and reliably. Oh, I am so happy with this giant drawer. Big flat objects like this are really tricky to store, and this honestly works perfectly. Now that that's done, we can focus on the bulk of the storage, which will be big sets of 3D printed drawers that extend towards you. Oh shoot. I had to pile everything back in here because we're still living in the van. Those drawers will extend towards you and towards the back of the van. Now, I was really proud of how much I incorporated the lessons from the first cabinet organizer into the design of this one. I made it way more modular. Every frame and drawer is exactly the same, so everything's interchangeable. I designed these little tracks for it to sit in. Everything prints in a single piece, so no more gluing. And I even added these little fillets near the top so I could print each frame in one piece with no support material. But as the saying goes, if you want to make God laugh, tell him about your plans. And after about 5 hours of printing, right near the end, the first drawer frame failed. You can see here what happened. That sharp corner at the base forms a stress concentration, and as the slope is building on the top, that column is getting top heavy until the combined movement of the bed and extruder just snapped it clean off. This was a pretty easy issue to solve. I just reinforced those bottom corners by adding chamfers, but I ended up printing the rest of the frames on the X1 Carbon. And if you were wondering before why the X1 Carbon is significantly more expensive than the A1, even though I did say before that the A1 can do almost everything that the X1 can do, this is one reason why. Bed slingers like the A1 run the risk of toppling tall, skinny objects, which isn't really a problem on the X1 since the bed is only moving up and down. But you could definitely print this on the A1 if you just added some struts in between the columns. Oh, by the way, no, the printer is not in the van anymore. I sort of used up our batteries by doing a ton of 3D printing on cloudy days, so I moved the printers into my brother-in-law's apartment, where the A1 and X1 Carbon are now just cranking out drawers. As I mentioned before, Bambu Lab is having a 2-year anniversary sale right now, so whether you're looking for a full-size starter printer like the A1 or something a little more robust like the X1 Carbon, this is a great opportunity to pick up one of these amazing machines and save some money in the process. Having a print farm is, it's pretty awesome. Would recommend. I'll be the first to admit that this storage system is not perfect. The whole thing's a little awkward to pull out from the cabinet. It could definitely use a handle, and the handles that I did 3D print did not come out great. I think just because of the angles that I used in the design. It's also not the most aesthetically pleasing thing. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm no Scott Ujan. Although we did hang out in Seattle. Great guy. But compared to how this was before, compared to 4 months ago when this cabinet didn't even have a latch and we'd be driving down dirt roads in Mexico and stuff would be falling out, it is like living in a bright new world. I mean, the fact that I know exactly where everything is, the fact that if I just need to access the hard drive from 2022, I know that it's in this drawer and it's right on top of the stack. The fact that a lot of these drawers have empty space in them and it's not a full thing that I can add more. The fact that there's exactly enough room back here for a spool of filament lying on its side feels absolutely incredible. Penny's been trying to escape this entire time, so I thought I'd just do the outro with her. Thank you to my top supporters on Patreon, Paige Arlt, Luis Armendariz, and my mom, Kathy Kert. Love you, Mom. Thank you also to Bambu Lab for sponsoring this video, patreon.com/MorleyKert if you would like to directly support this channel, and I will see you in the next video.